Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Sunday School review where the Word of God this week, oh my goodness, it's going to break it down. It's going to let us know that there's no place to hide from God. I mean, God's presence is everywhere and His promise. Our lesson is broken down in different parts. Part one is unsearchable knowledge. In the first six verses of our lesson, verse one is complete awareness. Verse two and three is complete insight. And in verse 4, 5, and 6 is complete understanding. And then unavoidable presence, verses 7 through 12. 7 through 10 is in space. 11 and 12 is in darkness. Our lesson reads this way. If you turn your Bible to Psalm, the 139th division of Psalms, verse 1, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my downsetting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain unto it. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day, and the darkness and light are both alike to thee. I want to kind of close it right here and give a little commentary, a little context on our lesson, and then we'll go on from there to get into a little verse by verse exposition or commentary rather. And in the context here, when I read in the lesson, Psalms 139 has no reference to a particular historical circumstance, so we don't see a specific historical context in the life of the writer, which is believed to be David. Context then helps interpretation, and a thorough examination of Psalm 139 reveals complexities in its structure that complicate a straightforward interpretation of David's intent. To analyze the Psalm's content, some scholars have proposed dividing it into sections of praise. That's Psalms 1 through 18 and limitations is 19 through 24. And then based on the initial expressions of gratitude followed by anguish, these can further be broken into four stanzas of verses like 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 18, and 19 through 24. And these issues also prevent this Psalms from fitting neatly into conventional categories of Psalms, which, when clear, can also aid in understanding the ancient text. And finally, the text assumes that David was beset by wicked adversaries opposed to him and opposed to God. And these individuals harbored animosity toward God, profaned his name, and spoke maliciously against him. Psalm 139, verses 19 through 22. Furthermore, David implored God to probe his innermost beings and guide him toward eternal life. Psalm 139, 24, 23 through 20 and 24. But the connection between our lesson and these opponents is still very unclear by many. So in verse number 1, he said, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. So David's complete knowledge, God's complete knowledge, and David's complete knowledge of God's complete knowledge, often referred to as this, some say omniscience. is the attribute that encompasses, what does it encompass? His infinite awareness and understanding of everything that has happened, ever happened, and everything that will happen. And we might think of this verse as the beginning of the courtroom drama, where the Lord is trying the evidence of David's character. Thou hast searched me and known me. The Hebrew word translated search is the same expression employed to describe a cross-examination in a judicial context. God is a judge who has meticulously scrutinized and comprehensively understood all the evidence required to judge the motivations of the heart. Man looks on the outside, but God looks on the heart, and God looks on what's going on the inside. In the second verse, thou knowest my downsetting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts afar off. The psalmist now employs the term downsettings and uprising to convey God's knowledge of an individual's entire day. God knows our whole schedule. We got to plan our week. God already know the plans before the week is planned by us. God knows our whole entire schedule, not just for the hour, not just for the day, not just for the week, not just for the month, not just for the year, but for our entire lifetime. That's hard to put our mind around that. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. God knows both the public and the private parts of our lives. He knows what we display in public, in front of the audience, in front of people, and he knows how we act at home. Just like our wives and husbands know us, our sons and daughters know us, our siblings know us. God really knows us, publicly and privately. The Hebrew term translated compasses in context of an image of sifting grains to separate the grain from the chaff that can be used from that floats away. So this then suggests that God, metaphorically, sifting David's life to separate the chaff from the wheat. God knows what can be used in his kingdom, and God knows what's just fluff, just a whole lot of talk, talking loud and ain't saying nothing. And then we go on to the fourth verse. For there is, so I just went over the second and third. The fourth verse, for there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. So then in human communication, the potential for misinterpretation or misunderstanding is huge, is large. As much as the comprehension comes down to not just what you say, not just the nonverbal clues, but also the tone and the body language. It's not what we say, it's how we say what we say and how we look when we're saying it, and how we express ourselves as we say it. So nonverbals are just as large as the verbals. Even when face to face, even when right eyeball to eyeball, kneecap to kneecap, eyeball, just looking at a person right in the eye, even when face to face, using words carefully selected. I mean, just walking on tissue paper, misunderstandings can still occur because words are often highly context dependent. What went on before, what went on after, gives us some definition or some comprehension of what's being said right now. So the risk of being deceived by people acting as if they got all this character is real, because people can act any kind of way. People can act as if they're on God's side, they got high character and moral values, and have nothing of the sort. I want you to read Romans 16 and 18 and 1 John 4 and 1. So then, in stark contrast, God possesses unparalleled ability to comprehend every word, every thought, every intention. God never gets the wrong interpretation or the wrong understanding or the wrong impression. Why you say it like that? Why you got your eyes looking like, why you got your face that way? Why you holding your hands up? God never misunderstands because he knows the thoughts, the intents of every single word that we use. And in 5a, thou hast beset me behind and before. The word beset, an act of confinement, binding, or encircling. And most of the time, this applies to a situation of a city that's besieged or surrounded by hostile forces. I want you to read Deuteronomy chapter 20 and verse 12. And the word is also used by the beloved friends, by beloved friends. If she had a door, this I'm going to read Songs of Solomon 8 and 9. If she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. A similar concept with a different word is used to describe God's protection of Job. Look at what it says in Job 1 and 10. Hast thou not made a hedge about him and about his house and about all that he had on every side? The evidence suggests that David was experiencing God's presence behind and before as some kind of hindrance. Sometimes the Lord would prevent us from doing something or going somewhere or doing something that's going to cause us to have great harm, great pain. Sometimes he can delay your trip. Sometimes you think, well, they're holding me up. This traffic is holding me up. This train is holding me up. This person talking so much is holding me up. It could be this God is behind and before preventing something from happening that would happen if you take off right now. And the second part of verse 5b, and laid thine hand upon me. Although God is a spirit, God don't have hands and feet and eyes and nose, he's a spirit. The writer goes on at best he can to describe the way that God, to the audience, to describe God in a way that his audience could understand. And there is precedent here for desiring God to turn his attention to someone else from them. An example of that is with Adam and Eve. After eating the forbidden fruit, the last thing that they wanted was to face God. You read about this in Genesis chapter 3 and verse number 8. Then also Job asked God, would withdraw his hand. Job asked God to withdraw his hand from him. I want you to read Job 13 verses 20 and 21. And then Ezekiel described God as striking his hands together to punish Judah. I want you to read Ezekiel 22 and 13. Then later on, John the Baptist described Jesus' hand as at work in judgment. I want you to read Matthew 3 and 12. So then there's the possibility now that David could have experienced God's attention as being too intense for man to bear, for man to be able to deal with. I want you to read Psalms 25 and 7 and 32 and 4. So this Psalms then has really no real confession of sin. And in fact, it asserts that David's blamelessness, he was a blameless man here in this Psalms here, but one wonders if God's nearness, if the nearness of God was bringing to light what David had preferred to leave in the darkness. Being so connected and close to God, God is all holy. God is all illuminating light. He is holy, holy, holy. So there's a possibility, and this could have illuminated what David, when he saw God, how holy God was, he saw the darkness in his own life. You remember what he did with Bathsheba and with her husband, and what happened with her got her pregnant. You know the story. So all this stuff could have brought to light that David said, I don't want to even have to deal with this. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it, is what verse 6 says. And here we see the profound difference between the positions of God and man. I want you to read Job 42, 2 and 3, and then Isaiah 55, 9 through 11. After thinking about, after deliberating and contemplating the unexplainable nature of God's mind, David concludes that God's knowledge is far beyond the comprehension of man. Man don't even come close. Man is not, you can't see man with a high-powered microscope. He's minute, he's minuscule, he's invisible when it comes down to the knowledge of God. The reality of our unexplainable God leads the psalmist to acknowledge that God, that he is fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalms 139 and 14 in the same book we're reading today. In verse 7, whither shall I go from thy spirit? So the question is, can any hide himself in secret? This is what Jeremiah 23 and 24 says this. Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him? Said the Lord, do not I feel heaven and earth? The other deities in the regions were considered to be limited geographic spheres of influence, either here or there, but God is omnipresent. everywhere at the same time. They can only be here or there, and they're made by the hands of man. The Lord, on the other hand, reigns over and is present in all places. Not to mention the fact that these regional gods were entirely fictional. Many of them was made by the hands of man. Now some worship the sun and the moon. So these are things that they just made up. But God is not made up. God is real. God is you can experience God. You can feel him moving down in your soul. In the 8th verse, if I ascend up into heaven, well, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. So here we see then the places where David could not physically go away from God to hide from God's presence, because he couldn't go to heaven. That was the home of God, and David couldn't walk to heaven. He couldn't ride a chariot to heaven unless God gave him a chariot from heaven. He couldn't go there on his own. This is where God resides. And then considering the place of the dead was believed to be under the earth. So these two extreme places had great distances one from the other. And the point here is there's nowhere that man could go, high or low, to hide from God's presence. Verse 9, if I take on the wings of the morning and dwell in the utmost parts of the sea. Wings of the morning is a poetic reference to sunrise, which happens in the direction of the east. The sea here refers to the Mediterranean Sea, which lay west of Israel. And so direction of the sea, the sunset is the east, and the sea is the west. David again then describes the impossibility of going east or west as far as they can go to hide from God. You can't do it. And so then Jonah found this out the hard way. God told Jonah to go east to Nineveh. Jonah wanted to go west to Tasha. And boy, didn't he get in some trouble. You read Jonah chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. And in verse number 10, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. David knew that he could be guided. He could be guided by the hand of God, regardless to wherever he was in the world, in the earth realm. God would guide him. You read Psalm, we studied the 23rd Psalms already. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. We also learn about that surely. Goodness and mercy going to follow us. We read about that all the days of our life. And we're going to dwell in God's presence forever. You see, so his hand is always there to guide us. So this assurance then, blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of heaven divine. This assurance brought comfort to David. Whatever he's going through, whatever adversary he has, God is able to bring him through. And God is able to keep him from any kind of hurt, harm, or danger. The first part of verse 11, it says, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. So look at David now bringing the conclusion of the whole matter. And the futility of trying to hide from God. Class, we're going to bring it to a close right there. But it's important for us to always remember we serve a big God that knows everything, a big God that's everywhere, a big God that has all the power, everywhere, all the power, and he's all over the place at the same time. That's a big deal. So let's not try to hide from his presence. Let's ask the Lord to lead us and guide us and direct us and protect us and keep us from all forms of evil and danger, seen and unseen. And you know what? He'll never leave us. He'll never forsake us. And you know what, class? That's sure enough good news. Hey, y'all have a good rest of the day, rest of the week, rest of the month. Look forward to seeing you again on next Sunday for our next Sunday School Review. Y'all take care.